Okay, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Auditor General Committee meeting of Thursday, September 18th, 2025. This meeting is being held in person and by electronic means. Committee members and the public may participate by either method. Any members joining electronically are reminded to enable their video to confirm quorum. I do note we have a number online today. The meeting is being live streamed on the city's website and YouTube, and meeting progress will be updated regularly on X at Van City Clerk. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We thank them for having cared for this land and look forward to working with them in partnership as we continue to build this great city. I'll also recognize the immense contributions of the City of Vancouver team members who work hard every day to help make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. Clerks, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Councillor Dominato is the chair. Councillor Kirby-Young.
I heard.
And Councillor Kirby-Young is the vice chair. Councillor Klassen.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Montague.
Present.
Councillor Jo. Councillor Fry is the alternate, non-voting. And we have external representative Archie Johnson.
Here.
Okay. And we have external representative Sophia Sui.
Here.
Thank you. The meeting has quorum, Chair Dominato.
Thank you, clerks. So the plan for today is we have one report and one communication on the agenda. First item or agenda items, we have the audit of recreation facility asset management. Before I begin this item, do we have any conflicts of interest? I'll just check in with anyone online. Clerks, not getting any notes? Nope.
No.
Okay. So no conflicts of interest. This item has a presentation, roughly 42 slides. So we'll now invite our Auditor General, Mike McDonnell, to introduce and present the item, along with staff from his office, Lori Burnt, Deputy Auditor General, Kenny Chan, Senior Auditor, and Becky Ma, Senior Auditor. So welcome, and welcome everyone in the gallery as well.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors and advisors. Today I'm presenting the results from our performance audit of Parks and Recreation Facility Asset Management. This, my second audit of the Vancouver Park Board, was initiated upon invitation from the board. I thank Park Board commissioners for this invitation, as well as their invitation to conduct a third audit, which we will be commencing shortly. Challenges with certain recreational assets in the city have been well known. There have been a couple of high-profile issues with the Vancouver Aquatic Centre. There's the ongoing challenge of keeping the kids' pool in operation, brine leaks in ice rinks, and generally poor state of community centres. I wanted to understand why, so that's why I chose to do this audit. It's also known that there's a $500 million annual infrastructure deficit in the city of Vancouver. The difference between the funding necessary to keep the city's assets in their current state and the funding that's actually been approved. We estimate that for recreation facilities, they comprise roughly $33 million of this annual infrastructure deficit. Under the Vancouver Charter, the Park Board has oversight of park-related recreation facilities, including community centres, pools, and rinks, in addition to a broader range of public parks and beaches. However, maintenance of recreation facilities is a shared responsibility between the Park Board and the city. Under a partnership agreement, the city's Real Estate, Environment, and Facilities Management Department, also known as REFM, provides services to the Park Board for planning, development, and maintaining recreation facilities. And the long-term financial strategy team from the city's Finance and Supply Chain Department works with Park Board staff as it develops the city's overall capital plan. A lot of the city's recreation facilities are old, but old doesn't necessarily mean in bad shape, particularly if asset maintenance has been well managed. A capital asset management framework is a well-established approach to planning for new assets and maintaining existing assets, including repairing and replacing or decommissioning facility components and buildings. It typically includes a council-approved policy framework and asset management plans for significant individual assets or asset groups. Effective asset management means managing assets to optimize service delivery and minimize costs and risks over the life of each capital asset. The province of British Columbia doesn't currently require local governments to have asset management frameworks, although some leading local governments in BC do, at least to some extent, and they're required in Ontario. A key component of an asset management plan is level of service. For facilities asset management, two broad types are important to understand. Community level of service measures services the assets deliver from a customer's perspective. This includes whether facilities have enough capacity, are available at appropriate times, are reliable, and maintained to an agreed level of quality while being financially sustainable and affordable for current and future customers. Technical level service is more of an engineering perspective, defining asset performance levels that drive required lifecycle activities and associated funding. The objective of this audit was to determine if the Vancouver Board of Parks and Recreation and the City of Vancouver effectively managed existing parks and recreation facilities to align with strategic goals, meet service level priorities, and optimize asset life cycles. The audit focused on the period between January 2019 and June 2024 and included agreements, practices, and administrative processes that the Park Board and City departments produced prior to 2019 that were still in use during the audit period. The audit focused on existing recreation facilities. We developed specific audit criteria related to 4 areas of examination as shown on the slide: governance, asset life cycles, finance, and performance measurement and monitoring. 46 recreation facilities were in scope, including pools, rinks, and community centers that the Park Board is responsible for. Given the shared nature of asset maintenance responsibility, the examination included Park Board staff and the city's REFM and finance departments. We reviewed existing strategies, agreements, financial information, and asset management activity records, conducted interviews with staff, and completed analysis of data such as asset inventory information and maintenance records. In addition, to gain a more in-depth understanding of how maintenance is planned and carried out at different types of recreation facilities, the audit team visited and met with staff at 6 sites: Vancouver Aquatic Centre, the Renfrew Community Centre and Pool, the Roundhouse Community Centre, the Hillcrest Community Centre Pool and Rink, the Britannia Rink, and the Kerrisdale Rink. The audit included a review of governance and management processes directly related to recreation facility asset management, but didn't consider broader governance processes. Governance of parks and recreation in Vancouver has been a topic of considerable discussion over the last year and a half. However, I must emphasize that in no way should the findings and recommendations of this audit be construed as a commentary on the governance structure. Other than those recommendations that address the relationship between the Park Board and the City, the remainder of the recommendations will be applicable regardless of the governance structure going forward. We limited the audit scope to existing recreation facilities, so didn't examine other non-building related assets or planning and project management activities related to new facilities. Nor did we include an examination of whether existing facilities were in need of renewal or replacement. The audit also didn't include an examination of procurement activities or an assessment of the city's capital budget process beyond the scope of how capital investments for recreation facilities are prioritized for inclusion in the city's capital plans. Overall, we found that our audit criteria were not met and significant opportunities for improvement were identified. We concluded that during the audit period, the city's parks and recreation facilities were not effectively managed to align with strategic goals, meet service level priorities, and optimize asset life cycles. I provided 13 recommendations in the audit report. I acknowledge that implementing these recommendations will require significant effort. However, if fully implemented, I'm confident they will strengthen the capability of the Park Board and the City to better define and meet current and desired levels of service and ensure the life cycles of existing facilities are optimized. I'm encouraged to have received a positive joint response to the audit and its recommendations from Park Board staff and the City, and that action plans have been created, including a commitment to, quote, strengthening interdepartmental coordination and ensuring transparent, accountable operations, end quote. As required by the Auditor General bylaw, I submitted this report to the Park Board in advance of submitting it to you, my Oversight Committee, today. I'm pleased to report that this report's 13 recommendations were unanimously endorsed by the Park Board at their meeting this past Monday. I thank the Park Board senior leadership team and their staff and city staff at REFM and Finance for their assistance and cooperation throughout the audit. In particular, Steve Jackson and Sarah Iacco from the Park Board, who are here today, Armin Amrolia and Carrie Hughes from REFM, who I believe are also here. I look forward to observing the implementation of their action plans in the months ahead. I now ask Laurie Barrett, Deputy Auditor General and Engagement Leader for the audit, to present detailed findings and resulting recommendations. Laurie?
Thank you, Mike, and good afternoon, committee members. I'll begin by presenting the audit findings and recommendations related to governance, strategy, and the financial state of recreation facilities. We found that the City and the Park Board had established goals for recreational facilities, including repairing and renewing aging facilities, but that the City did not have a council-approved policy or strategy or a formalized asset management framework to guide asset management planning. The City and the Park Board worked collaboratively to identify facility investment priorities, but there was a lack of alignment between the Park Board's targets and the level of funding approved by Council. We found various community and technical levels of service in Park Board strategic documents, REFM operational processes, and internal planning documents. However, there was no established framework to assess whether the existing operational and capital maintenance programs were prioritized in alignment with them. We reviewed the reports and information that Park Board commissioners and Council received related to recreation facility asset management. We found that updates on project status, quarterly capital budget adjustments, and capital plan midterm updates were provided. The Park Board also approved plans and strategies that included information on the current state of community and aquatic centers and some strategic community levels of service developed through multi-year engagements and public consultations. However, the Park Board's plans were not facility asset management plans, and an asset management plan had not been developed for the city's facility portfolio, so neither elected bodies received complete and consolidated level of service and financial analysis to support effective asset management. This leads us to our first set of recommendations. As they are included in detail in the report and on the slides, I will not read them in full, but will highlight some key points. Recommendation 1 is that the city should implement an asset management framework, including a policy and a strategy to guide the development of asset management plans. Flowing from the first recommendation, our second recommendation is that the Park Board and REFM should develop an asset management plan for recreation facilities. Leadership of the plan should be determined, and it should align with the asset management framework and be approved by the Park Board and Council. The asset management plan should include core elements such as the state of infrastructure. Next slide, please. Current and planned community and technical levels of service, a life cycle management strategy, and a financial strategy. The plan for recreation facilities should be integrated as a component of a broader asset management plan for all city facilities and used as an input for citywide asset prioritization processes. Once levels of service have been defined, our fourth recommendation is that the city should establish and implement the level of asset management reporting required by elected officials for effective strategic decision-making. Asset lifecycle costing assists in making informed decisions as it includes the total cost of operating and maintaining an asset over its lifespan and renewing, replacing, or disposing of it at the end of its useful life. The city had estimated some life cycle cost components, but did not have a complete understanding of them for existing facilities relative to desired levels of service. Using a Facility Condition Index, or FCI calculation, the city determined that only 28% of recreation facilities were either in good or fair condition. The remaining facilities were categorized as poor or very poor. The FCI is an industry standard calculation that measures the facility's condition needs relative to the replacement value, so the lower rating does not mean that facilities are unsafe. The City and Park Board had an aim to improve the condition of facilities so that 70 to 80% were in good or fair condition by 2050, but they did not have agreed upon investment targets specific to renewal or maintenance. Mike spoke earlier about the city's overall infrastructure funding deficit and the estimated $33 million per year for recreation facilities. We found that the city developed a revenue-generating strategy that included property tax and utility fee increases to partially address the deficit. However, it projected a shortfall as far out as 2075. This calculation had not yet factored in other potential sources of revenue, such as funding from other levels of government or developer contributions. Recommendation 5 is that the city should calculate and consolidate relevant life cycle cost estimates to support long-term investment planning. Once life cycle costs are consolidated, the city should update the infrastructure funding gap calculation and analyze it relative to current and planned levels of service. Levels of service or funding investments should then be adjusted as required to address the shortfall. The scope and coverage of asset management-related services that REFM provided to the Park Board were laid out in a partnership agreement established in 2014. We found that the services outlined in the agreement were generally provided, but there was some lack of clarity related to responsibilities and which budget some of the tasks and materials should be allocated to. Park Board staff and REFM had been working on an operating level agreement intended to address a range of items not covered in the partnership agreement, but it was not finalized or approved. We recommend that the Park Board and REFM's partnership agreement should be updated to include accountability requirements, defined roles and responsibilities for the development of an asset management plan, and some additional detailed guidance on maintenance responsibilities and their alignment with budgets. The following slides are related to our main findings and recommendations on facility asset lifecycle management. We examined the systems used for recording information, along with 3 separate programs: operating maintenance, which includes preventative maintenance and demand maintenance, capital maintenance, and major capital projects. We found that REFM used 2 systems for asset maintenance management, which were adequate to store information and data. However, the systems were not well integrated for analysis and reporting purposes. The lack of data integration or linkages between the 2 limited the ability to view a complete asset history in one place, to create a full picture of each facility's operational and capital needs. We noted that REFM had proposed 2 major data enablement projects, which were currently in progress. We recommend that the city should implement an integrated information technology solution to manage and report on its capital asset-related data. Preventative maintenance is the regular and routine maintenance of equipment and assets in order to keep them running and prevent costly, unplanned downtime from unexpected equipment breakdown. Predictive maintenance is a type of proactive maintenance that uses data to monitor a system and evaluate it against historical trends to identify potential issues before they impact system performance or reliability. REFM had a preventative maintenance program in place, and work orders were executed by trade shops, on-site Park Board mechanical technicians, or REFM mobile crews. Ad hoc reviews of maintenance schedules were conducted, but the program lacked formalized reviews, adjustments for aging facilities, and predictive maintenance capabilities to help optimize asset performance and lifespan. We recommend that REFM should formalize a process to regularly assess the effectiveness of preventative maintenance schedules and leverage data analytics to support predictive maintenance. REFM provided demand maintenance, which included emergency repairs. Facility staff submitted work order requests, which were assessed for priority and dispatched by REFM's Work Control Center. Process guidelines specified the time frames for addressing high, medium, and low priority orders. However, we found that there were delays in closing them in the system and issues with data accuracy, so recorded delay rates may not accurately reflect when work was completed. We recommend that REFM should improve its data reliability to accurately assess work order completion rates, and the Park Board and REFM should implement risk-informed measures to reduce the delays in demand maintenance completion. The city used a reactive approach to maintaining recreation facilities that were not prioritized for capital maintenance investment. This can be appropriate and cost-effective when applied to low-cost, non-critical assets that can be quickly and easily addressed. However, for assets that require more maintenance time, higher replacement costs, or risks of cascading failures, reactive maintenance can lead to much higher long-term costs and operational disruptions. We found that REFM did not have a formal risk and criticality matrix to support decisions on when to use reactive maintenance. The capital maintenance program addressed major building systems such as roofing, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Capital maintenance was prioritized by considering the impacts of different tiers of building systems and investment categories developed by REFM. REFM had developed a 10-year forecast outlining funding needs under various scenarios. Based on its calculations, approved funding levels were insufficient to address REFM's forecast costs of critical maintenance needs, with capital plan commitments at approximately 29% below forecast. Approved funding levels were significantly short of the forecasts for addressing the non-critical needs of the portfolio and the maintenance backlog. While REFM had conducted some analysis of maintenance activities within each of its programs, it had not undertaken a comprehensive or systematic review of how suspended or delayed capital and preventative maintenance affected demand maintenance costs, service disruptions, and levels of service. As a result of these findings, we recommend that REFM, in conjunction with the Park Board, should assess the benefits of a balanced maintenance strategy that ensures the quality of maintenance data, assesses to what extent demand maintenance is the result of planned or capital maintenance not being completed as required, includes a risk and criticality matrix, determines budget and staff capacity, and includes a funding strategy to shift the balance from reactive to proactive maintenance and address the capital maintenance backlog. The audit also looked at how the city prioritized renewal and replacement projects for recreation facilities and found that the capital planning process incorporated several key elements aligned with recognized best practices, including considerations of asset condition, risks, some desired service levels, and life cycle costs. However, there were no formally documented capital planning procedures to ensure a consistent and defensible framework was applied during each capital plan cycle. This leads us to Recommendation 11, that with input from the Park Board, the city should develop a standardized framework for prioritizing recreation facility asset renewal, replacement, and disposal. The framework should incorporate clear evaluation criteria and documented rationale to support transparent and defensible decision-making. Our last set of findings and recommendations is related to performance measurement and monitoring. Performance measurement can support decisions related to capital investments and resource allocations needed to meet level of service objectives. We found that the Park Board and REFM tracked some performance metrics, but there was no overarching framework for asset management performance or a consolidated set of key performance indicators to provide an overall view of recreation facility operating efficiency relative to levels of service. We also observed that the partnership agreement included a section on key performance indicators, but did not require REFM to report to the Park Board on performance metrics. Reporting on metrics related to targeted and delivered levels of service would improve the Park Board's ability to monitor the asset management services provided by REFM in fulfillment of the agreement. As a result of our findings related to performance measurement and monitoring, we have provided the last two recommendations in the report. We recommend that the Park Board and City should review and update current metrics to create key performance indicators that integrate measures of utilization, maintenance, and cost efficiency. And recommendation 13, that after accountability requirements have been updated in the partnership agreement, REFM should report its results against agreed upon performance measures and targets to the Park Board to demonstrate its fulfillment of facility asset management obligations. I will now turn the presentation back over to Mike.
Thank you, Lori. The recommendations in this report point to the need for candid and fulsome conversations about service levels and the costs associated with delivering them. The city has limited resources and has to continue to prioritize where they'll be spent and where trade-offs will have to be made. My recommendations are intended to ensure these difficult conversations start now, that the resulting decisions are made transparently. We have two suggested recommendations for the committee to consider: that the Auditor General Committee endorse the 13 recommendations in the report dated September 11th, 2025, entitled Audit of Recreation Facility Asset Management, and further, that the Auditor General Committee recommend that Council endorse the 13 recommendations in the aforementioned report. I'm happy to take any questions the committee may have, but before that, Chair, perhaps now would be a good time to ask if city staff or park board staff have any comments they'd like to make.
Certainly. Just looking to see. No? Okay. No comments from staff at this time. We do have a number of members of the committee, though, who have questions. So I'm going to advance Councillor Kirby-Young first for questions. Go ahead, Councillor, or Vice Chair, sorry, Vice Chair Kirby-Young.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the report. I have a couple of questions, and I'll sort of start with saying that I think there's strong support because timing being what it is, Council had a motion yesterday, probably helpful to inform the members of the committee around informing the upcoming capital plan. We have 4-year capital plan cycles, as you know. And so we did include a recommendation there that was supported by Council to have staff come back with options to develop a capital asset management framework. So I just thought that would be a helpful update in terms of context. I am interested, sort of building on that, to learn a little bit more around this sort of service levels piece. And I don't know, Mike, if you can sort of speak a little bit in putting that in sort of real life terms. Is that about how much we can afford in terms of utilization? How many people can swim in a pool, for example, or can utilize a recreation center? Or are we trying to set minimum levels in terms of opening hours? Or do we recognize that the demand on the facilities has to be managed as they age over time? Can you just kind of fill in a little bit of color what that means?
Sure. The report does speak to levels of service, and levels of service from a use of facility perspective, a user's perspective, is very much around how many hours the service is available, the uptime, so reliability measures, quantity of service. That's a really integral part to understanding the cost to service. In the public sector, success is not measured by how much money or how little money is spent. It's what's achieved through the expenditure of those dollars. And that is measured through the level of service. So the two are the two concepts, that the cost of delivering the service and the level of service are intimately intertwined, and one really should not be considered without the other.
So I mean, hard to speculate sometimes what motivation or concern might be about committing to level of service, for example, that might have to change, based on available resources or budget. But would your argument be that predicting your level of service is important because that also enables you to predict so your corresponding and supporting operational costs of maintenance? That it's an component.
It flows both ways. What level of service would the city like to deliver? Okay, well, what's the cost associated with that? Going backwards is, well, how much money is actually available, and what does that mean for the level of service that can be delivered?
Yeah, no, I appreciate, I understand that. I think the other thing, when you said that there are some leading cities that do have, it's not required, there's a provincial legislation, and like in Ontario, it's not required, but there's some leading cities. Who's doing it? Who has one or is doing it well that you're aware of? Is there anything you can share there?
We have that in an appendix to the report. Just let me call that up unless my team has it right at hand. The council-approved asset management policy strategies and her plans are placed in Langley, Saanich, Courtenay, Mission, District of North Vancouver, Port Coquitlam, Revelstoke, and Cowichan Valley, and New Westminster have asset management strategies. So it is being done to varying degrees already in British Columbia.
Okay. And then I guess the last piece is that you're suggesting that RFM needs to have a level of accountability back because of its, in terms of whether it's providing services for city or park board, in terms of what it's delivering. Is that a fair collection?
Yes, that's correct. That would be our last two recommendations. Recommendations 12 and 13 speak to the performance measurement framework and the accountability reporting back to the park board, who does, under the Vancouver Charter, have responsibility for oversight of the assets.
Okay.
These assets.
Thanks. Is there any comments that staff would like to make on that before we run out of time on the RFM piece? City staff?
No, no, it doesn't look like there's any comments, Vice Chair.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll advance Councillor Montague. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I guess just one question for now, Mike, unless something else pops into my head. And it looks as though there's been a practice of run to failure and with some assets or the majority of assets. And I'm wondering if you can kind of explain the dangers of that or why that is problematic.
Certainly, Councillor Montague, run to failure or reactive maintenance, as we have termed it in the report, is a process where an asset or a component essentially runs until it breaks, and then there's a repair that's necessary. That results in a couple of things. Results in unplanned maintenance and downtime, unexpected downtime for facilities, and it's also usually quite costly. It's also an approach that's perhaps appropriate for simple components, but it's not necessarily appropriate for complex systems. Hence why we've recommended a shift from that approach to a more proactive maintenance approach.
Right. I mean, I run my cars to failure, but it's easy for me to buy a new car. Is that sort of what you're saying? But it's hard to build a new community center or pool.
Well, we talked about a capital asset management framework as a context, in the context of, say, a automobile user manual. It's a bit of an oversimplification, but the ideas, I think, are transparently and similar. So you have a vehicle, you buy it, you run it a certain number of kilometers, you have to change the oil. You have to run it a few more kilometers, and you have to have different fluids changed and the brakes checked. And that's to ensure ongoing service, reliable service, and predictive service, and to also minimize cost of operating that vehicle over its useful life. But at some point, that car gets past its useful life, and trying to keep it on the road becomes economically unviable.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that analogy. I guess my other question was to staff, and probably, well, either Steve or Armin, or both Steve and Armin. The audit was up until I think it was June of 2024, and it was sort of touched on at I can't remember if it was council or committee the other day that there have been some changes, and I'm wondering if either Steve or Armin or both can sort of discuss kind of some of the changes that have been made since the end of the audit period.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So the audit period was, I believe, April 2019 to June of 2024. Since then, we have put in $8.5 million into the Britannia rink. That's being done right now. We had a $175 million expenditure and budget for the renewal of the Vancouver Aquatic Center, which has been actually in development for the last almost year and a half. We've gone through a number of iterations of, as the council knows, on what to actually do with that pool. And then there's a number of other newer facilities that are coming on board that weren't necessarily part of this audit, but will be into the future. The reality of the expenditures of not having enough funding to go forward are very real. And in fact, in the last 2.5 years to 3 years, every single dollar that has been allocated to both parks and to REFM for maintenance for recreational facilities has been spent. And in fact, last year, we were at about 98 to 110% expenditure. So we are actually making, we're being responsible around all the money that we actually get to actually maintain the facilities. Other than that, I don't know, Steve, if you want to add to that?
Thanks, Armin. I actually think you nailed everything on that one, but I wouldn't mind just adding a little bit more context to your previous question as well on that sort of run to failure, which, you know, on the thinking about the asset is one thing, but I think about it more on the sort of end user and service delivery piece. So as you can imagine, if we lose a pool, it's not just, you know, to your point, yeah, you can't rent a pool immediately. We've now displaced a significant number of user groups and patrons, and accommodating that becomes a real exercise and real onerous task for staff as well. So it's more than just the exercise that then needs to go into immediately planning and finding capital to renew and do the planning. It's an onerous operational exercise as well to figure out how do we now displace other folks to accommodate the folks who are displaced by the ones asset that was impacted. So it's quite a compounding impact by not maintaining these and not having predictability around those maintenance plans and when something will be shut, and making sure that user groups are accommodated.
I'd like to also add just one point. It's not part of the audit, but certainly Kids Pool is something that we're actually now creating scenarios for redevelopment and or renewal. It wouldn't have mattered how much money we put into that pool, how much maintenance we would have had into that pool, how much planning could have gone into that pool. We couldn't have predicted a king tide. It wouldn't have mattered what we did to that pool, and it is an aging asset. So there are situations and circumstances outside our responsibilities and our control that are affecting our aging facilities. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you. I
that.
appreciate the responses, and Chair, thank you for the extra few seconds there to
Yes,
get
sir.
a fulsome
Well,
response.
You're welcome. I wanted to make sure we heard those responses as well. Thank you for those questions. I'll advance Councillor Claassen. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you to the Office of Auditor General and Mike and staff who've been a part of this. And, this is a pretty critical topic. I know that it sort of comes up in various conversations in community. And, I know that we take these matters pretty seriously, but I want to make sure that we understand not just the gaps that the report highlights, but how we can also act on its recommendations in a realistic and balanced way. So given our current budget pressures and the work that REFM and Park Board are already doing, as just mentioned by Armin. And so with that in mind, I've got a few questions to help sort of clarify how the audit applies to Vancouver's situation and what practical steps we can consider next. We already heard from you, Mike, just about the appendix that mentions the asset management plans that are in place with other local governments. Did you happen to know if any of these asset plan and management plans in other jurisdictions were able to close their funding gaps?
We did not look at that specifically, Councillor Claassen.
Okay. So these challenges are clearly not unique to the City of Vancouver, but it sounds like we don't really have a broader understanding of what might be happening outside of our boundaries. Is that correct?
Well, the situation in Vancouver faces is not unique. And so I have in my introductory comments a quote from the New Zealand Infrastructure Minister. The country of New Zealand, roughly the same population of British Columbia, is running into the same problem that we're having here in Vancouver. And roughly, many of the assets are of comparable age. And the issue is having those transparent conversations about what the implications of funding are. Because inevitably, it's going to require either more money or there will be less service provided. And ultimately, that's what the recommendation of this report are pointing the city towards, is that transparency.
I'm glad that you went to another hemisphere to look into that, not just outside the boundary road. So if the funding, the current funding is clearly established that it doesn't meet our life cycle needs, so in your estimation, what benefit does a new asset management plan provide beyond just documenting the shortfall?
It's been proven that the comprehensive capital asset management plan over the long term is a less expensive way to operate. And it also provides better service and more reliability to end users. So it's less disruptive. So it's a better way to manage.
Thanks. So which of the 13 recommendations from your report you consider the highest priority, and what is a realistic timeline to possibly implement them?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm in a position to say which is the highest priority. I would suggest, though, that it will take some time to deal with them. This is a situation that has taken many years to reach this point. It will take a number of years to to address some of the issues. It will take some effort to put the data together because we don't actually have the data in order to put a capital asset management plan together. We don't have that understanding of service levels as well. And so it will take effort. And in terms of implementation, I've always said when I'm asked that question about how long should it take to implement the audit recommendations or what's a reasonable time, honestly, that's a subjective determination that I would actually ask you in return. It's really for council to determine what they believe is an appropriate period of time for implementation. And that's part of the follow-up process that I'll be engaging in every 6 months with the recommendations here as we go forward.
For elected officials, the answer is always yesterday for something like that. So,
In a perfect world.
yeah, of course. I noticed that, and it's my understanding that both the Van Play and Van Splash reports were more community visioning exercises with not any sort of financial basis assigned to them. And so would it not make more sense for financial analysis, not kind of aspirational targets, to guide a performance assessment?
I think the people of Vancouver deserve more than aspirational planning.
So currently, it's quite surprising to understand that recreational facilities represent about 22% of our current operating budget and 32% of our capital and maintenance budgets. That $33 million per year number really stands out, obviously. Do you want to take a shot at where that money might come from?
Councillor
knowing-
Klausner, I'm just going to interject and ask you to come back on because you're over time.
Okay.
And we can come
I'd
back
be
to
happy
that
to
question.
come back on and we'll bring that question back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Do I need to ask second round or council? Okay, I'll ask second round. Okay. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Mike, and also the committee. I think it's very important work for to manage city's asset. Some of my question were asked, but I have some further question. I'm looking at slide 12. The third bullet says the city and the park board identify investment opportunities, priorities, but targets and funding approved by council were not aligned. Can you elaborate why is that?
I can't elaborate as to why. I'm just pointing out the existence of that gap.
So do you think the two government body was the reason why we have this gap not aligned?
Well, certainly it is a fact that there are two governance bodies, but I have studiously tried to stay away from that question so it didn't distract from really what we were focusing on.
Okay, thank you. So how does this framework will help us to solve this challenge, given we have two different bodies? Are we going to have framework for park, framework for the council? How do we consolidate all this different priority just into one framework?
Well, the city owns the assets that are under the care and custody of the park board. So one would think that there should be a citywide comprehensive plan that would include recreation assets as well as the other assets that are managed by the city directly.
Okay, so in other words, you think city should be the one taking the lead of managing our assets?
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying they need to work together.
Okay. All right, thanks. Regarding the metrics and data, so which will be very key for this framework, I think that's the question to our staff. Do we have all the available data elements we have in terms of infrastructures, city assets? How do we report that on a regular basis? Not sure if we have, maybe that's the question for EFM or...
Hi, Carrie Hughes, and I'm the Director of Facilities Management and Operational Excellence within REFM. Thank you for the question. And in answer, we have many of the components of that, and we continue to increase the quality of our data and increase the amount of data that we have in our reporting. So it is an effort that we have been spending some time on. But I would say that we don't have absolutely everything that is required at this time.
Okay. How does our data governance compare to other municipality in terms of the managing the asset?
with regards to data governance. And so the data governance piece is something that we continue to work on. We have two different systems that we capture information in. The reality is we use our SAP system, which is a city system that captures a lot of the maintenance data, the work order specifics, the financial pieces, and then we have an asset management system, and that captures capital maintenance and our programming needs. And the building condition assessment information. We do utilize reporting in order to combine the information, but we don't have one centralized system. I would say that that is very relevant to other cities. They would have similar systems in place trying to capture the information. There's no one perfect system.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the performance indicators, do we have any KPI set up for the performance? Like, for instance, the condition of the asset, of the facility?
We do. We do building condition assessment reports, and we have that external engineering companies come in and look at our buildings, and they pull together reports that would look at all aspects of the facility. And then we do capture that information, and those are based on about a 5-year cycle for each of our facilities.
And currently, council don't see that report, right?
You probably do not see that. It's very detailed reports, very, very operational. And you also had asked about key performance metrics. We do have some key performance metrics related, more technical in nature.
Okay.
That's
All
your
right.
time, Councillor.
Thanks. Yeah, that's all my question. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for the answers. Councillor Clausen.
Thank
ahead.
you again, Chair. This is not intended, although it may sound a little bit, is a decision best left to elected officials. But I'm wondering that through your explorations on this subject, whether you were able to try and see what kind of balance can be struck when it comes to the $33 million shortfall that we're facing. And is this a decision to be made around either raising taxes, cutting services, or decommissioning facilities, which is all the above is what the public does not want, of course. But I'm kind of curious what your lens on this subject, what other jurisdictions perhaps may have, how they have approached this.
Sure. You'll find that auditors general, regardless of jurisdiction, whether it's local government, provincial or federal, are rather reticent to get into the discussion of budgets and what the appropriate amount of money to spend is, because as you rightly point out, Councillor Clausen, that's the purview of elected officials. In this instance, I'm just pointing out that the need to have those conversations, because we don't live in a perfect world where we can have everything. Or sometimes we have to have things that we don't want. And I would urge you to have those conversations, begin having those conversations now, continue with them, because this is a problem that's not going to go away anytime soon.
Good stuff. I just heard Carrie speaking, and I'm just curious, do you feel that your audit fully reflected REFM's ongoing data integration and capital planning work?
I don't believe we missed anything.
Yeah. Okay. So I just was kind of curious as to why that information may have not been highlighted more prominently in this one, perhaps as either an appendix or
Well, you'll appreciate that when you're auditing something, it's a bit of a moving target, and we draw an end date. Otherwise, the audits can carry on for years and years, and that's not to anybody's benefit. So we had an end date, and circumstances may well have changed since then.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm just going to wrap up with a couple more quick questions, and it really is about the risk and the service and risk to service continuity. In your estimation from the work done by your audit team, which facilities are at highest risk of failure or closure within the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, our examination was not intended to answer that question. We chose particular facilities to go a deeper dive in just to better understand the nature of different classes of assets. So community centers, rinks, and pools, but was not intended to, so we did not look at all 46 and rank them in any way like that.
Okay. And are there any short-term measures our team can take to prevent any service disruptions?
I wish that I knew the answer to that question. And if I did know it, I would tell you.
Okay. Thanks very much. That concludes my questions, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Claassen. I'm just going to add myself to the queue, seeing no one else. I just have a couple of quick questions, one for Auditor General. Noting that we're just about to embark on the planning process for our 4-year capital plan, which will ultimately come to council next year for endorsement. Do you see this overarching capital asset management framework being a way to optimize what comes forward in terms of that planning for that 4-year capital plan?
I see it as being very informative if it were in place, because a capital asset management framework would inform not just the the cost of getting new assets, but also what the implications are for new assets as they're coming on board relative to the cost of maintaining what's currently there. So yes, and a comprehensive inventory ranked as Councillor Clausen was looking for would also inform where council might want to have its priorities.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is for maybe Armin or Steve. We've recently been briefed on opportunities emerging from AI, and I'm curious if you see an opportunity with technology to leverage that as part of sort of an overarching asset management framework, if that we may be able to leverage that new technology, emerging technology in this work.
Thank you for the question, and I'm drawing blank stares, so I'm sorry I can't answer the question necessarily, but certainly we would be using AI to enhance whatever we end up doing going forward for creating or establishing more formally the asset management plan, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no one else on the queue for questions, and there's no registered speakers to this item, can I get someone to move the motion, the recommendations? Moved by I saw a mover from Councillor Zhou, seconded by Councillor Clausen. Any further discussion? Okay. I see Councillor Clausen on the queue. Go ahead, Councillor Clausen.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks again to the OAG and staff for looking at this. This is obviously a reflection of kind of where we are and where we've come from in terms of having a lot of aging facilities and limiting funding sources to address them. I don't think this is a story of neglect, but a story of trying to do a lot with not very much in terms of assets and resources. And so, but I do know that as a growing city that we are duty bound to try and respond to the pressure and the demand that the public is asking for. I mean, there's sort of been stories in the news throughout the year and the last few years about access to facilities, swimming lessons. We've had a very robust public discussion around swimming pools this year. We've had promises of new facilities, renewal at Kitts Pool, millions poured into just repairing a damaged pool. We're talking about 50-meter pools and 25-meter pools and other places for older adults and what have you. So I do think that this is very much a story of the time that we're in right now. I'm also aware that there is considerable work happening and considerable investment, that $8.5 million that is going to Britannia Community Center's ice rink. A beloved and needed facility. It's a practice facility for many teams. Children get their skating lessons there. The Britannia Community Center Association had their annual general meeting last night I was aware of. I was not able to attend, but I know that they wanted to know more about what the city is doing there, and we provided them with some updates. And of course, the huge investment that's going into the aquatic center to turn it into a bright and modern facility to meet the downtown needs of the West End and downtown residents. So I look forward to kind of working with staff and our park board on finding a practical path forward that prioritizes investments and strengthens accountability and keeps the public informed, because ultimately it's the public who are really looking for these important assets in our community. And we're reminded constantly when we're adding more housing and more people to this city, the more pressure we're going to be facing on these facilities. So this is an incredibly important topic, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to advance through either other ways of revenue generation. We've been talking about investments that have come from private individuals, but ultimately for the large ticket items, we're going to have to continue to fund those through the usual revenue sources that we have. So thanks again to your team, Mike, and to our staff who responded to your questions with openness and painted a picture that the council very much has to take a look at what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Claassen. Seeing no one else on the queue,
Sorry, I don't know if it's just me, Chair, but I've lost your audio.
sorry, it's back on. For those of you online, please have your videos on, and please vote using the Creston system. And if you can't, you can get a vote assist. I'll take a vote assist in favor, please.
Also a vote assist in favor, please, Chair, Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Thank you. We're just waiting for the votes to come in. Okay, and thank you. Those recommendations pass unanimously. Thank you for that. We are going to move on to our second item of the day. And the second item is the 2026 Auditor General Committee Meeting Plan. Before I begin, do we have any conflicts of interest to declare? Okay, hearing none, I'll invite our, just give the Auditor General a moment. And thank you to all of our staff and team that were here to answer questions. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike, to introduce this item.
But for a variety of circumstances, it didn't work out quite that way. So, so that is the intention here. The two placeholders in April and May. If we don't have agenda items, then we'll cancel those meetings 3 or 4 weeks in advance so that you can clear your calendars and move forward. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Committee members, any questions on the proposed schedule and agenda? Okay. I'm hearing none. In that case, I will call the question on this item. Please vote on Creston. I'll take a vote assist in favor.
Also a vote assist in favor, please.
Thank you. Nope. And that passes unanimously. Okay, that concludes item 2, and I think that is it for our agenda and motion in committee today. So could I get a motion to adjourn? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to those of you here in the chambers, and also thanks to everyone online for joining us. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody.